So systems and path. Here's my summary slide. You can look at this and then go if you want, if it's getting boring. Systems and pathways need to upgrade to anticipate the next growth barrier. I think I said that. Don't wait till the symptoms appear. Once you've made a leap to a new stage, you need to say, okay, what's the easiest and simplest thing? What's the most urgent thing to do to get ready for the next growth barrier we're going to hit? And so as you hit 120, you need to think, okay, we want to grow to 350. What do we need to start doing differently if we're going to survive and be able to go through that growth barrier? Next slide, Tom. Next transition would be great. Okay, the leader and the leaders around them must reallocate values, most important, roles and time. And the really important thing is letting go. It's not a matter of just adding things to your resume. You've got to, for everything you put in the canoe, you've got to throw something out of the canoe. You've got to let go of doing other things and divest them to other people. Next transition. Leaders and those around them, you've got to train yourself and those that you're leading in new skills. And I'll give you an example of that in a minute. And the next one is leaders must communicate what is changing and explain persuasively why it needs to change, articulating vision and values. So if you can't give your people a vision of, it's been great meeting in my lounge room, but if we're going to reach our suburb, we really need to move to the Scout Hall where it's easier to find us. It's easier for people who would find it hard to break into a small group to come. We'll be more visible. We can have a kids ministry. The music will sound a bit better. Here are the reasons why those things need to change if we're going to reach our suburb more. You need to have some kind of vision and start articulating a different set of values for the next size of church that you're going to be at. So we go to the next slide, Tom. Let me give you an example of how that works. Oh, sorry. Yeah, so as Scott said before, we could talk about character. Character really matters, and character matters more as you get bigger. You might even get a sense for that as we talk about the other thing, which is bandwidth, which is your leadership practice needs to make quantum leaps as church leaps. Next slide. So let me give you an example outside of our context to help you really get how this works. If you imagine an AFES worker goes to a campus where there's never been any ministry before, and what he does is he just sits in the cafeteria, sees someone on their own, goes up and says, "Hey mate, can I talk to you for 10 minutes about what it means to follow Jesus?" And he keeps doing that, gets some knockbacks, gets some conversations, and that's his day. Every day he turns up and he does that. You might want to think about what skills does he need to have to do that? Huge amount of personal resilience, being able to deal with one-to-one knockbacks. He needs to be flexible. He needs to be someone who doesn't need a timetable and a structure to make his day work. He needs to be self-motivated. There's a whole lot of things he doesn't need, but he needs to value the fact that he's a pioneer missionary reaching people, and he has to love evangelism. Okay, let's imagine he meets with a bunch of 4 guys and they're converted and he's got them in a small group. Next transition, Tom, would be good. Yeah, okay, next one. Converts 4 students and they're in a Bible study and he takes them out doing walk-up like he used to do. He now needs a bunch of new skills. He now has to get a calendar app on his phone because he's got a regular meeting that a group are turning up to. He has to be able to expound the Bible and teach it. He has to be able to disciple people, and he has to be able to train people, not just do it himself, but explain what he's doing and why he does it when they watch him do walk up with them. So he's starting to become a trainer. Next slide, Tom. Yeah. Imagine his 4 students are now at the point where they're each leading a small group themselves. He needs a whole lot of different skills now. He needs to be able to train and equip people so he can send them out and not see what they're doing And he needs to be able to catch up with them every now and again and not see what their group is like. He can't sort of, put a camera in there and watch them, but through questions, coach them and understand what their group's doing and coach them in that. Notice what he needs to value now. He needs to not say, I love playing soccer because I get to kick the goal. That's what he did as the evangelist. As the disciple maker, he says, what I love is putting the pass through where my team member kicks the goal. Once he gets to this third stage, he needs to be sitting up in the stand as the coach and saying, I love that my guy just kicked that goal. Listen to everyone applaud him and watch him, but no one notices me. The leader who leads leaders has to value that. Next slide, Tom. Imagine now you've got you now send out these 4 leaders to 4 different campuses to start doing what you did the first time. You need a whole new level of being able to imagine what's going on, of equip people to be self-starters. You need to give them the vision and the values of what you've done in those 3 steps so they can go out and do those 3 steps. There's a whole new set of skills that need to come on board. So the next, and the things that you need to value now is not so much look at my guy kicking that goal. What you need to value now is saying our organisation is kicking lots of goals. You need to be able to say, hey, look at your guy kicking that goal. Well done you. And you're much more remote from that, but still strategically hugely important. But you keep going. So just a little example to show you how the skill set needs to change. The solo worker on campus, he doesn't need to have good time management. He doesn't need to have lots of things. He doesn't need to know how a calendar app works. But if he's no good as evangelist, if he can't do the job, he's gonna die. The next step, you need to absolutely be a trainer, or things aren't going to progress. The next step, you need to move from training to coaching, and you need to especially think about how the pathways working, how the system's working. But at the final stage, for the head leader, it's all about coaching, and it's about coaching character. You're not mainly telling people how to structure things. You've done that already, or you shouldn't have sent them out to the different campuses. What you're doing now is equipping them to have the character needed to lead a complex organisation where they have to deal with lots of conflict and risk and all sorts of issues. The larger the organisation gets, as a leader, the more you end up spending your time managing conflict and guarding the vision. The only problems that get to you are conflicts that have come through 4 or 5 sets of good hands, where people who've got lots of skills have not been able to resolve them. So you feel like you spend your whole day dealing with messy and complex issues that are really hard to work out and never really resolve themselves in a really neat, clean way. You have great skills at dealing with ambiguity and chaos in how things work. And if the value you have is, you say to yourself, I really wish I was just out there sharing Jesus in the cafeteria, and you don't actually value serving the organisation by creating a system and a culture and creating in the character of your leaders a movement that can go forward, you won't make the transition well. You must change the things you value. I've got more detail I could talk about, but I feel like that's probably enough to get some questions going on what do you need to work on as a leader, and what do you need to help the team immediately around you to really work on?
I want to go to you again just to get a bit more reflection. Like, which did you find the hardest in terms of making that transition?
Probably the first one. I just love meeting with people and looking at the Bible. And now I get to meet with people. So one of the things I've realised I need to do as a leader is I need to actually occasionally do that. I would love always to have one non-Christian person I'm always meeting with, but most of my opening the Bible is now investing in leaders. the thing I find hard is other people getting the credit for that. So if this is not being recorded, so our kids ministry, we used to have an intern, a Bible college student, and my wife lead that. It now got to the stage where it's the kind of thing most churches would have a staff member look after. We have 3 lay people, volunteers, who look after that together. They did a training thing last Sunday where they asked me to come along for the first 5 minutes and just talk about how kids ministry matters. And then they said, we're the 3 leaders of this. Here's my role, here's your role, here's their role. Here's how leadership's structured. Here are your job descriptions. They really organised, did it really well. And someone said to me, they said, where do you find all these great leaders? Our church doesn't have leaders like that. And I'm thinking, I invest all my time in developing these people. I didn't find great leaders. We've had to work and train and develop them. And I have to say, yeah, they're kicking great goals, aren't they? So it's not really about, if I want to get the credit, if I want to be in the limelight, if I want people to think, isn't Craig great? I've really got to let that go, and I've got to value people looking at other people and saying, hasn't Craig got an easy job because he's got such great people who kick great goals?
So I heard 2 things:
Yep.
valuing success through others, and valuing that's going to happen. But I also heard actually, valuing that actually that's the thing I ought to be doing, not doing doing the ministry as well.
Yeah.
Which sounds really really hard thing to do.
Yeah. So you've really got to say to yourself, what's going to reach Australia? Me meeting up and reading the Bible with people, or me raising up 100 people who can do that?
Yeah, I was coaching someone last week on this, and I made him cry, and I paused and said, "What did I say too harshly? Have I been unhelpful?" But they stopped and they said, "I'm just grieving the fact I really love meeting up with these people and discipling them, and you've just made me realise I'm not going to be able to do that as much as before." And isn't that great that they value that ministry? But isn't it great that they've made that value change?
And it'll come in little unexpected ways. So like I said before, it's that Sunday where you think, oh, were Bill and Mary there? I don't know. They're in my launch team, and then up there. When the time comes to not shake hands at the door, if that's what you do, because the queue's too long, you suddenly feel like people think, oh, it's a shame I don't get to shake hands with Scott anymore, but you're the person most impacted by that, okay? And you've got to find other ways to connect with people. As church gets bigger, you connect with people through your preaching and from the platform, so they still feel they know you well. If you've been part of a large church, you'll notice that in the preaching of the senior pastor, everyone feels like they know them. They know all these quirky stories about them and that kind of thing. It's not because they're more quirky than other people, but because they actually, through accident or design, work really hard at people knowing them. It's not a two-way street. They don't know the people in the congregation nearly as well, although they do need to spend lots of time thinking about what kind of people we got. They need to listen when problems come along and issues come along and say, why aren't we reaching high schoolers? Why aren't we reaching this ethnic group? Why do we have a pattern of people who've been with us this long stop coming? And you need to understand your people, even though it's hard, you can't know every one of your people. Yep.
So that's really helpful. You've helped us think about the application of our time needs to change. What we value needs to change as we step through those leadership pipeline sort of kinks. And then the last one there, our skills as well. Now, we didn't get time to talk about character, but a couple of things just on why character needs to grow. And
we don't want to go to questions?
Well, there was no questions. And then as I asked that question, a question came up. So just give us one or two things on the character question, then I'll go to Paul's question.
Okay.
Okay.
So character matters at every level of leadership, but it'll get tested as church gets bigger. So we could talk about things like transparency. As I said before, your knowability is a really important part of that. People need to know that they trust you, that you're reliable, and people need to know that you know what you're doing, that you're credible in what you do, especially the people around you. Because when you're small, if people have got an issue with the fact that we're we're not singing Collins songs anymore or whatever it is in kids' church or what's happening, you deal with that. But as you get bigger, your people take a bullet for you. They take a bullet for your dumb decisions. And so they need to really have a lot of confidence that you have their back, that you know what you're doing, that you're going to keep turning up and doing what you're doing, and that they know you and understand that the vision matters to you, and that they know where they stand with you. They know when they've done a bad job. They know when they've done a good job. So those things matter at every level of church, every size of church. But as church gets bigger, and as you ask more of the people around you, particularly, those things become more important, and the small cracks become big cracks.
Good. That's helpful. Just to have a little quick rave on that.
And your Reach Australia and Geneva coach can help you work on those things.
Good, good, excellent. Paul has asked, would you be able to comment on different styles of leadership and personalities and how they might contribute to bottlenecks?
Yeah.
So don't mention any names here,
Yeah.
just the personality types.
Sure. All leaders as churches grow need to become more self-aware about their strengths and their weaknesses. They need to not... at the beginning, you're the jack of all trades, right? You can do the kids' talk, maybe lead the singing, you know how to run a small group, you know how to do a sermon.
Play guitar? Do you play guitar?
No, I don't.
You don't play guitar?
No,
okay.
I can tap like this. You do all those things, and if you do an average job, it's okay. But as church gets bigger, ascetics means you have to specialise, and you need to realise that your strengths are narrow, your gifting's narrow, and you need to trust the people around you and recruit people who have the gifts that you don't have. The same's true in leadership. So there's an area of leadership, not character. If you need to work on character, and character will just limit how big a group you can lead. But if you're not good at, cultural intelligence, reading how we're connecting with different groups in the community, if you're not super good at strategy, if you're not good at designing systems and pathways, you need to have some sense of those things, but you need to bring on board people who can help you with that and give. So you need to build a team around you who aren't like you, but have gifts that complement what you do. I think if you can do that, it doesn't matter what leadership style you've got, what personality type you've got, you can grow. If you're willing to actually be humble enough and self-aware enough, then you need to grow a team. I will say, leaders of churches, this is counterintuitive, over 350, tend to be introverts. Because if you're an extrovert, then the leader of a large group needs to be able to, steer the ship while everyone else is down in the mess, having fun together, and not decide to leave the wheel abandoned or leave it with someone incompetent because they want to go down and connect with everyone. You need to be able to step back from the group and think about how the group is going. So the extrovert finds it harder to lead a church once it is that 350 barrier. But and I'd say the introvert finds it hard to lead the house church because it's all about relationships, and it's not really about thinking about how the group's going. It's just about getting there.
Are there some personalities or people who just can't, can anyone not grow past the growth barrier? So actually, they're best to just be the person who starts a church, gets it off the ground, and then goes, right out, I've hit my threshold, it's time to hand it on. Yeah,
so I've coached some people, and they've said, I want to know whether I can grow my church, or whether I'm the reason it's not growing, and whether I need to leave. I think almost anyone, if they're willing to sacrifice and let go of the roles and the values they treasure, can do the next step. But in saying that, it's not sinful if you can't. Some of us just can't do that. If you're wired to be an evangelist and you love that, and you're terrible at organisation and administration, then maybe you need to be the guy who stays in the cafeteria and evangelises people, and you're not the guy to grow things bigger. So it's partly about working out where do you fit best, and where can you help us reach Australia by being in the place you're in.
Now, final question for you. Craig, you're married to Kathy.
Yep.
Some advice for husbands out there on loving, supporting their wife as she goes through the growth barriers with you.
In the minute and a half you got.
I know. Well, we could go a little bit longer if there's.
So we do a whole thing on this. I think the thing to say is your wife will go through all the same griefs you go through as things change, but she'll feel like she gets less say in what happens. So my wife was super central to, before the launch team, there's the two of us dreaming a dream, praying prayers. Even the launch stage, she was really crucial. Now she feels like she hears about major decisions at church when they're announced in church. And so she feels like she's been pushed to the outside, even more than, I feel like things have changed for me, but I still get to go to the leadership team meetings. She's been pushed to the outside, and there's bits of her that like that, and there's bits of her that struggle with that and really grieve that as well. So you need to love your wife and care for your wife as you go through that process. And it may well be that you're up for church getting bigger, but it's going to so break her heart that as a couple, you aren't the right fit to grow bigger.
Mm. As Craig said, there's lots of resources on that. We've got a number of marriage and ministry talks from our Fresh marriage conference, which we put on for Geneva church planting couples. It'd be well worth having a look at as well. But just to recognise, as Craig has helpfully got us to think, there's a grieving process for your people. There's a grieving process for you. But there's also a grieving process for your wife and kids as well as you move through these growth barriers as well. Craig, really helpful to have your wisdom on this topic today. One of Craig's roles is actually to train our coaches. I think this is a critical coaching question, and so we as a network want to continue to have coaches that are pressing into these growth questions and helping you as a leader think into that. So if you're wanting to have a coach, then go to registrar.com.au and ask about coaches that are available as well.
We finished with the Reach Australia song?
No song. There's no song.
No?
Excellent.